By the way, sorry, just a quick
Yeah.
feedback. It would be nicer if you would put the camera down a little bit, so that because now it's just your head.
Okay. Yeah, I will. But by the way, we are live now.
You would see. Yeah, like this is
So
better.
we can start. Thank you, man. So good to see you. Hi, Ike. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, thank you. Hi, Ihor.
Hi. So first, I would like to remind and introduce ourselves. So my name is Ihor. I'm the CEO of Application, the company that is focused on blockchain development, blockchain consulting, and ICO market. With me is Eike Post, my very good friend, very old friend, and new friend at the same time. And we are going to discuss the state of the market and the trends in the ICO. And I'm pretty sure that, Eike, you have a lot of thoughts and insights on this. But first
Maybe.
of all, could you briefly just share your experience with cryptocurrency market overall?
All right. So just to myself, as I said, I'm Eike. Have been, I'd say, a serial entrepreneur. Did several businesses in different industries. Have been involved in crypto to some extent already in 2011, but then really, I'd say over the last year, a bit more than a year, I have dedicated myself almost full time to everything related from blockchain, cryptocurrency, distributed ledgers, and specifically mostly ICOs. The experience that I probably share with you, which might be most interesting for you, is ICO related. And I guess the question you had was, where do I see the current market, right?
Yeah, but we'll get to there. So
Okay.
maybe we could start with how have you been involved in crypto?
Okay, so I'd say I've been a lot of things at the same time. I've been a student, an advisor, and an investor and an entrepreneur. Everything at the same time. Most recently, there is a small venture that I've built together with some of my colleagues and friends, Nuclear Block Ventures. And I'd say we are a mix of being a venture investor and a venture builder.
Okay, and is it true that you were kind of reviewing the ICOs and selecting the ICOs for certain people or investors?
Yeah, of course, I was. So this came about like two people asked me about my opinion. So they just shared white papers with me. Two different kind of investors, one being from an ICO pool, investment pool, another one being institutional investor. And then I read the white paper, analyzed it, and then I came with my own opinion, and they felt it was very useful. And then I kind of have been doing that for some time, since several months, yeah.
Interesting, great. Yeah, it'll be interesting to discuss how your evaluation criteria changed over time. But maybe when after we discuss the state of the market, your vision of where the market is heading.
Sure. Well, I'd say it's a little bit related. Um, Everything is a little bit related because where I see the market heading is more towards offering real value. So ICO projects offering real value, which could be either clear utility or equity, and also protecting the investors better. And that's related to the valuations of the ICOs and the problem that I'm currently seeing with many ICOs, that many of them are not protecting the investors in any way. They could, if they wanted to, just take the money and run away with the money pretty much legally, because investors are not really investing or buying anything. They're just saying they're buying tokens, and that's just a promise that the tokens could be used if there is a product. But if there's no product, then tokens are not used. So you're not even scamming people, you're just taking their money. And there is no clear definition of what value is being offered. So a lot of and I was very surprised that several months ago, when I was, or maybe a year ago, when I was discussing with several investors, and I think that's still the case even nowadays with ICOs, investors many times have the idea that if they are investing in the project, then they somehow participate in the success of the project. But that's really not true. You are the company that you are investing in, or that you are buying tokens of, could be making billions of dollars, and they could be then selling products, accepting fiat currency, while also accepting cryptocurrency, accepting the tokens that they sold. But they could be making billions, and you could be, the token could be worth very, very little. And I think many people still haven't realized that. So I guess these two things: my evaluation of the market and where I see the market going, and where also where I see the problem that I see currently with the ICO markets, all related.
Okay, so basically the market is maturing. The tokens are going to be attached to some utility or to the equity of the company, representing some real asset.
Exactly. So, of course, I mean, if you have a utility token, there is a utility, right? It's just that sometimes this utility is defined as, for example, being able to vote. So I'm able to vote on decisions of the company in which I do not have any interest, except that I'm able to vote for the company. That's not a real utility. A real utility is really something like a pre-sale of a product or a service. So this is like the two kinds of utilities: product or service. So when I'm investing in an ICO, when I'm buying tokens, I'm basically pre-buying a future service, which is really like what I'm doing on Kickstarter. And that's also similar to what I do on Groupon. I'm buying a token, I'm buying a coupon for a future service. The only thing why I feel that when investors are investing in tokens, they're really not, when they're buying tokens, they're really investing, they're not really buying the utility, is because a lot of these investors don't really care about the utility that's being offered. They just think that this token might appreciate, and that's why they are buying the token, meaning they're investing. And you can, to prove that, I would say, would anybody go into a store, put $1,000 on the cashier's table and say, give me any kind of product you have for this $1,000? No, you wouldn't do that. You wouldn't give a certain amount of money for not having defined what you're going to get. But there is really no ICO which defines exactly what utility you get. The most they do is they might define, well, we're going to give you this kind of utility, but they don't tell you how much you're going to get for one token. If I don't know what's the price of that utility, I don't know how much I'm getting. So, for example, they could tell you, well, you're going to be able to buy advertising space. This token will be utilized for the advertising industry, so you're going to get advertising space. Okay, so my question then would be, okay, so if I buy one token, and one token costs $1 in fiat currency, how much advertising space do I get? Do I get 1,000 impressions, or do I get 0.01 impression? Well, that's not defined in the white paper. So they don't really tell me what utility I'm getting. They can define the utility, they can define what I'm getting afterwards when they launch a product. So really, it doesn't make sense for me to invest in the utility. I'm really investing into the fact that I think the token might appreciate. And so it's really an investment, and doesn't really have to do much with the utility.
Right, and so that's why the liquidity has been important, because
of course, because I mean, I think that's really the main difference between Kickstarter and ICOs. I mean, Kickstarter, of course, is huge. I think Kickstarter even now is still, I think Kickstarter is alone with the kind of funding they get is might still be bigger than ICOs, is several billion. But Kickstarter, I mean, has been much slower process to get to this volume. And I think the reason why we have this hype with ICOs is just because a secondary market, and a secondary market where I can sell the tokens and make a profit really, really quickly. And so with equity investment, so there's crowdfunding investment, which has been very popular, increased in popularity a lot due to legislation changes in the US and in Europe. But still, you don't have the secondary market where somebody can invest, and within months make a return and be able to sell it. So with ICOs, that was possible. And because it was possible, people said, wow, I'm making quick returns. They tell their friends about it. They're interested in making these quick returns. A lot of influx of new investors into the market, all wanting to make a quick return. Because everybody wants to make a quick return, and they're all hyped about it, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. That's the tokens really do rise, and many times have been risen to 10x within a few months only, due to the secondary market. Yeah, so it's a secondary market that's really, really important. So if you don't have a secondary market, for example, for equity ICOs right now, secondary market is still a big problem. It's not really existent. That's why equity tokens cannot take off. As soon as this problem is being solved, I see that equity tokens would take off.
I see. And do you see any projects that are like fundamentally right from the token economics perspective on the market? Some that you truly believe in?
I don't want to mention any specific names, and I do feel that the token economics is a little bit overvalued, because again, for me, it's either utility ICO or it's an equity ICO. If it's an equity ICO, then it's really not so much the token economics, just how much equity do I get for purchasing one token? I mean, this one token, how much equity does it convert to? And then I just have to value the company, just like a startup investor would do.
Well, sorry to interrupt, but there are also the mixed models. For example, Binance, which is basically buying back and burning the tokens. I love this mechanism, really. So the value of the token really correlates with how well the company is doing, how much of the turnover they are doing. So it's very close to how the regular business would do.
Okay. Yes, you're right. I agree with that. So to answer your question, yeah, Binance token model. That's a good one. Yes.
All right.
But yeah, that's the other thing I wanted to say to continue my thought is, for utility tokens generally, I should be buying a utility. So if I'm really thinking not as an investment, but I'm talking about the utility, it's kind of like the same as with Groupon. I'm buying a coupon to get access to a restaurant. So I'm buying a token to get a certain product or service. So then it should depend more on the value of the product or service, not so much on who is buying, who is selling, and how many times it's being bought or sold, because I'm getting a certain fixed utility.
Okay. Thank you. So basically, we identified that the trend in the ICO is to be more mature and more rational, right? More fundamental.
Exactly. So what do I mean with that? Just more mature. For me, I see maturity being in the sense of less scam, being that there's more requirements for somebody to want to invest or want to buy your tokens, meaning you have to come to a further stage, not only write a white paper. There is more rules on how you can be able to use this money, so you not just get the rules and can spend in any way. And there is more clear quid pro quo, meaning investors get something of value, either a very clear definition of the utility or equity in return.
All right, and so you mentioned you're working on the nuclear block initiative, and
Yes,
we know it very well because we are a part of this. But could you share more about nuclear block and how overall it fits your vision of the trend?
So I mean, as you said, we're doing this together. So for you and for the viewers, the way that I see it is, we were interested with Nuclear Block Ventures, especially in the space of tokenized investment. So any kind of investment for which I'm getting tokens. This is basically mainly an ICO, and also asset tokenization. So and equity tokenization. So established companies, not startups, established companies that want to raise money, not doing an IPO, but they can maybe do an ICO. It's easier than an IPO and raise money that way. And there we see a lot of potential. And of course, you, Applicator, being in basically the same space, helping a lot of your clients, ICOs, in in raising money, doing marketing and the technology for them. So of course we could see the way that we can combine the forces in order to make the ecosystem better. And what I mean with ecosystem better, basically addressing some of the problems that I just mentioned. So for example, investor protection, that an investor does, when he invests, the money does not go 100% to the founders, that there are certain rules, just like for the founders, how to use the money, just like there is for startup investment. There are rules on how you use the money. Every startup contract, I've been on both sides of the startup contract. So I got the money, and I had a salary cap, how much money I can pay myself in terms of salary. They, ICOs can do whatever they want usually. So we need to have these certain rules to prevent that ICOs are scamming, or to protect the investors. To have more, really, one of the things in ICO, to have more participation of the investors. Right now, I think there's less participation of investors because token buy is very much removed from the ICO. ICO can do whatever he wants to. There should be more participation, more communication, more reporting, and also potentially participation, direct participation of voting on important decisions. Then offering a real value, as we said, equity tokens. And then, of course, addressing some of the other problems that we both know ICOs face, like how do you get to all of these investors? How can an investor do the KYC to be able to invest seamlessly into the different ICOs? Does he have to do the KYC again and again every single time he wants to invest in a new ICO? Am I able to, as a startup, to quickly do a profile and maybe get investment from a lot of investors globally? Do I have to do a lot of marketing? How can I make this marketing less expensive? Then investing for small investors, many problems that we have identified as Nuclear Block Ventures, that I know you've also identified, because you also work with investors, where small investors don't get the benefits of large investors. The deal flow is limited. Now a lot of things goes by private sales,
right,
where only the big investors get to know about it, have the best deal flow, can do the due diligence, can invest big amounts, can get big discounts. Small investors don't have the advantages. Maybe they can stick together. Maybe they can invest together. How do they invest together? How is it possible? So there are tools that the ecosystem doesn't have yet. And the reason it doesn't have it yet, because it's a very young ecosystem. It's in the infancy. So now the question for us was, how can we develop these tools to make it better for everybody, both the founders, investors, and everyone in the ecosystem, make the ecosystem better? And that's why now we're doing this together in the Nuclear Block Alliance. This is an alliance of several companies. It's not only us and you, it's several companies in there which are all believe in making the tokenized investment ecosystem better.
Great. And so did your investment criteria or contribution criteria change over time? Like, say, if you were evaluating the project, say September last year versus now, what would change in your criteria?
To be honest, not so much, because the criteria that I mentioned that I think are important, they were important at that point in time, they're important now. What I think changed was that before, since many investors had different criteria set for mine, meaning they were investing in many projects, but I thought, maybe you shouldn't invest. Some of those projects were actually successful because it's all a question of supply and demand. If there are many investors who want to invest in a project which really seems to me like a shit project, but a lot of people just are hyped about it, it's going to succeed. So I actually think that I kind of adjusted to the strategy, in the sense of knowing that, hey, even if you can see that some projects don't make sense, and there have been projects in the past where I knew projects that were very similar in the startup world and that had failed. And the concept sounded great, but I knew this is not going to work, because I've seen other projects in the startup world that have done very similar stuff, very good team, and that it has failed. However, there was such a big hype that actually the coin or the token still today is successful. I mean, they haven't done anything in terms of creating revenue, creating profit, but the coin is successful. So if you take a short-term perspective as an investor, it actually does make sense to invest in this when you have a lot of hype, even though in the long term the project is not going to succeed. But in the short term, you can make a quick buck by actually buying the tokens and then selling the tokens, because they're going to go up because of the hype. So I would say maybe I'm now looking that hype actually can be a good thing, and hype can justify investing in something which maybe the fundamental criteria I would not invest, while I guess the market is realizing that hype is maybe not so important and more looks at fundamental criteria. So I would say my personal criteria becomes closer to the market criteria, because the market criteria is taking less account of hype, and I'm taking account more of hype, and we're kind of arriving at this kind of at the same.
Nice. Okay, what else do you think I should ask you? What did you want to share?
Where do you see the future?
Where do you see the future?
Again, a bit longer. Where do you see the future of ICO investment or tokenized investment?
Was that?
Just a bit longer. Where do you see the future? Where do you see the future of the of ICOs or of tokenized investment in general?
Is the question for me?
Yeah, no. You can ask the question this way. If you just ask, where do you see the future? I think would be better.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Okay. So where do I see the future of ICO investments? So there are several things. So we already touched upon them. So one is just the less scam by having stricter rules, by having investor protection. I believe that in the future, most ICOs will be required, in order to get money from investors, to take this money into an escrow fund, and to be able to take money from it over time, not be able to get all of it transferred into their own private accounts, and be able to do anything they want with the money. Second, there should be rules on how to use this money. Then I think there will be very clear utilities, clearly described. If you, for one token, you can get this in the future, or there would be equity. And I do believe that equity tokens will become much more popular, and that we will see companies offering part of the company in return, or not only part of the company, also part of the profit, part of the revenue. It doesn't have to be equity necessarily, but a kind of security in exchange for buying the tokens. And lastly, I would say much better tools to make it much easier for investors, especially small investors, to make a return, as well as for founders for good projects to reach the investors.
All right, thank you. You know what? I also believe in the utility tokens, but I think that they will have to go deeper into the applications themselves. So if you want to really secure that a certain token will behave the way you expect it to behave, you also have to secure that the applications, the code that the developers build is run exactly the way how it's been, let's say, described in the white paper. But it's still the unsolved problem is in how do you guarantee that the developer constructs the system in the way that it has been projected in the white paper, how they drill in the token economics and all the webhooks to mint the tokens, hold the tokens, burn the tokens, etc., according to what their formulas and business plans were saying.
Okay. About burning the tokens, the Binance business model. I mean, that's actually this true. It's one of the business models, tokenomics models that I did look at and I did like. Do you know any others that take tokens and burn them? And there was one question that I had, which was today, Stan and Ihor Baumann told me, look, Eike, it's not only about fixed supply of tokens and giving a token utility. You also have to make sure that the token goes back to the economy. So they're very much focused on, you need to kind of bring the token back to the ecosystem by giving it out for some services that you pay for in the token. So do you know how Binance does that, and don't you see a problem if Binance only uses the tokens for others to buy and then burns the tokens? Because it would seem that there would be less and less supply of the tokens.
Yeah, I think Binance model is pretty good in a way that it is simple, and it is reflects how economy actually works. So I do like that. I don't think they're gonna burn all the tokens. They are saying that they are only going to burn a certain amount of tokens, and that's it. So that's great too. It kind of limits, you know, the supply of. It limits the shortage of token supply. So that's fine. I've seen this model in other companies too, and we also had a couple of clients to whom we suggested to basically review this idea, because it's very simple and easy to build alignment on. I mean, alignment between the investors and the founders of the project. But so back then the problem was that people wanted to make it as a utility token to simplify the regulations or the compliance with the regulations. Whereas if you are burning the tokens, the regulating bodies look at this as the equity buyback, and they say that it automatically just falls back into the equity category. Now that the SEC pretty much said that all the tokens are considered to be equity tokens unless proven otherwise, now many companies that we work with, they are shifting from ICO to STO, being the security token offering, and then they are free to use all these models as well.
Okay.
But also overall, so what we do with the token economics, well, first of all, we make a very sophisticated timeline of the project. We calculate the supply and demand. We try to project how many tokens will be in usage. If there are going to be the master nodes, we also project how much of the supply will be locked in a way. So it gives us a good idea of how, like, where the token could go. And then over the project lifecycle, you can also kind of program in the minting of new tokens, so that on different stages of the product, there will be a different total supply of the tokens that will also kind of reflect the current risk based on the phase of the project, and will also equalize the price.
Okay.
So I think what's happening with like many people ask, why are the ICO price, like the tokens, why do they drop in price after the ICO when they get to exchanges? And it happens so often, unless it's hyped, as you mentioned. So if you have a hyped token, then yeah, it will go up eventually. But many tokens just go down. And I see the analogy with the Death Valley, which is like a principle or phenomenon in the startups, where like you're here first, then you're really going down in all your KPIs, and eventually you're gonna die here, or if you survive, you go here. And it's what's happening in the startup world. Same with the ICOs. So if there is so much of the supply, but the economics, the belief in the product, in the project overall, is at the low level, then it is going to be reflected on the price of the token.
Right, exactly. And I guess maybe what could also lead to that would be that people have bought the token at discounted prices, and they feel that now if there is an exchange and they can get this into real money at a higher rate than what they bought it, they just will sell it and get not 100%, sorry, 10x, but get maybe 20% within a few weeks or months.
Yeah.
Okay, so the interview, was it okay?
Yeah, I liked it.
Cool.
We're gonna ask our subscribers too what they think. Eike, I thank you for the interview. Thanks for your time, and as always, a pleasure talking to you.
Pleasure to talk to you as
hope
well.
to also have another interview soon, maybe
All
with
right.
some updates on nuclear block too.
Okay, cool. All right.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.